strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength of me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race.
In my shoes, listen to my blues. I stand before you, resilient, stronger than power, soft as a flower. I know the hour, I am the times.
It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race.
Appreciation, I need to know you know who I am and what I've achieved. Honor my journey, you could learn from me. Where there's a ruse, I speak the truth. I'm looking at you with respect and appreciation. I want for you the very best in all situations. When we get together, I feel so alive. No lie. Oh, we don't put up with neglect. Yeah, we are done risking our necks. We deserve all the love that we desire. That's by design. It is the strength
It's
for me.
the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerased, of a sisterhood, of a race.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. That was my first time hearing that full song, and I was over here just kind of jamming. My name is Kesey Cofield, and I'm going to be the moderator for tonight. I just wanted to welcome you all to tonight's conversation. For those of you who may be joining for the first time, or if you're unfamiliar with Unerased Black Women Speak, Unerased Black Women Speak is a public engagement initiative committed to shaping narrative and creating content that tells the continuous and unfolding story of Black women. In addition to programming like this, we have an awesome podcast available on all podcast platforms. So be sure to check out this month's latest Unerased podcast episode. A new episode drops twice a month, exploring issues that affect Black women of all ages.
Black women are fully present in all meaningful aspects of our daily lives. Yet too often we are left out of the conversation when mainstream media seeks to tell our stories. That is why we decided to launch Unerased Black Women Speak, a podcast series dedicated to elevating our voices and celebrating our accomplishments. Subscribe today to Unerased Black Women Speak, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and online at unerasedbws.com.
Awesome. So this month, Unerased Black Women Speak is launching its newest campaign, She Wrote the Book, which is an initiative exploring Black women authors, publishers, booksellers, book club leaders, and most of all, Black women readers. Our stories matter, our work matters, and our voices definitely matter. This evening, as a kickoff to this year-long campaign, we'll be speaking with Tracy Sherrod, who is an editorial director at Amistad and HarperCollins Publishers, and Marita Golden, who is an author and creative writing coach. Welcome, both of you, to tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. I feel the same. And good to see you, Marita.
Great to see you, Tracy.
Awesome. Well, welcome to you both. We are so honored that both of you have agreed to join us and kick off this new campaign of She Wrote the Book. So let's go ahead and dig into the discussion. Also, for those of you that are joining tonight, we would love to hear from you throughout the live. So feel free to drop any questions or comments as we move through the program. Are you ladies ready to begin?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. So the first question is, as it relates to published books, do you think the stories and voices of Black women are fairly represented in publishing?
Tracy, you want to take that because you're in publishing?
Oh, okay.
I'll take it, but I'd like to hear what you have to say before I say anything.
Oh, okay. It's been very interesting because I have found that Black women are always, in publishing. Our voices are being published. There was a time in recent years what was definitely, I feel, very male dominated. And then now there seems to be a resurgence so that it's becoming a bit mixed, same balance between men and women. And I hope that maintains itself.
Yeah, I think this is a great time for Black writers in general. And Black women have just absolutely flourished. And they're writing in so many different genres. Afrofuturism, popular, commercial, romance, literary, science fiction, you name it, a Black woman is writing it.
Mm-hmm. And lots of history and nonfiction, which hadn't been the case in the past as much. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel that we have, so many more Black women authors that are just making space in a lot of the spaces in which it was mostly dominated by men and mostly white men. So it's nice to see, this broad variety of Black women in these genres. So going into our next question, which kind of touches on that, why is it so important to continue to amplify the voices of Black women to you?
I think it's important to amplify the voices of all Black people. I like what Marita said earlier about it's a great time in publishing for Black people, and it truly is. It's easier to get. I think it's easier now than it has been in the past to get a deal. Yeah, I do. I believe that.
I think that it's so important that we continue to encourage all Black people to write. And the unique quality or the unique thing that I think Black women writers bring is that we still are marginalized within a marginalized group. For all the fact that we seem to have a huge presence, in media. If you look at salaries, if you look at power distribution, we're still lagging. And there are many aspects of our experience as women, as Black women in this country, that are still taboo, that we're only beginning to talk about. And so I think that it's really important that Black women be encouraged to write those stories that haven't been yet told.
Completely agree. And Marita, I hear that you're working on a book now called Strong Black Women. Can you tell us more about that writing?
Well, the book came out in October, and it's called The Strong Black Woman, How a Myth Endangers the Physical and Mental Health of Black Women. And it's a book written in kind of a communal memoir way. I write about my own experience growing up with the Black woman, strong Black woman syndrome, and how I work my way out of the traditional definition into a new definition that prioritizes self-care.
Awesome. I love that. And I think that's definitely an important topic, especially for Black women, as you know, in our workspaces, a lot of times we tend to do it all, carry the weight of it all. So it's important to take that time to also pour into ourselves so that we're not, approaching burnout so quickly. So that's an amazing work. And I definitely will be reading that. So I have a question specifically for you, Tracy. What are some tips and or starting points you would suggest for Black women looking to publish their work?
The most important part is to write it. A lot of people will, reach out about things that they're thinking about writing rather than write from your heart, write what it is that you want to say, and then present it to an agent, a literary agent, and then the literary agents present it to us editors. And congratulations, Marita, on Strong Black Woman.
Thank you, Tracy.
That's an area where I feel there needs to be more books and more discourse on. And I love the fact that in literature, there's been a lot of proposals that have come through about joy, finding joy in our lives, because a lot of times we're dealing with various struggles. And so I appreciate Marita's book and also others by Minda Hart, which I think are important to read. And also Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Dr. Inger, which is about Black women's emotional well-being. And all of this to say, the most important thing is read. Read, know what's out there, then write, and then present, because you have to understand where your book fits in the marketplace. And it's an ever-shifting marketplace. And things are happening very quickly in the industry. But I think it's wide open right now. People are very much looking for our stories. Because they perform well, or win awards, or.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw a comment that said just now, finding Black joy is an act of resistance. And I love that. I love that comment so much. I have a question for the audience, but also I would like to pose it to both of you. And the question, or rather statement, is, what is a book written by a Black woman that has resonated with you throughout your life?
Well, for me, it would probably be Their Eyes Are Watching God. In fact, in my book, my new book, The Strong Black Woman, because I'm a storyteller and not a therapist, I privilege stories and the healing power of stories. That is Black women telling me their stories of trauma and healing, stories of doctors and experts talking about our situation mentally and physically. But because I know that stories are deeply powerful, I end the book with an examination of Their Eyes Are Watching God. And that's a book that I reread regularly, because it is such a healing book. And I talk about the ways in which Janie Crawford is, in essence, a new age Black woman. She grows from being a young woman who is pretty much defined by her grandmother's notions of happiness and what she needs to do with her life. And throughout the journey that she goes on in the book, she becomes a woman of independence. She becomes a woman who learns to love herself. She becomes a woman who practices joy actively. And so it's very important for me that the final essay in The Strong Black Woman is about Janie Crawford and Their Eyes Are Watching God.
What about you, Tracy?
I love that, Marita, that you chose Their Eyes Are Watching God. Stoddart Imprint, we handle Zora Neale Hurston now, and we just recently published a book called You Don't Know Us Negroes, which is a collection of essays by Zora. And I think I sent you one, Marita. Did I send you one?
I'm still waiting for it.
I'm sorry. Everybody has said that as I await my copies as well. I will look into it.
Supply chain issues.
Yeah.
Supply chain issues. So I'm waiting patiently.
Right. And Zora wrote that book in 7 weeks. And that's what I found, really outstanding. And it was based on a relationship that she was attempting to have. And so I love Their Eyes Are Watching God too. I love Barracoon that Zora Neale Hurston.
Oh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Right? Just outstanding.
Yeah.
And then I saw that, the problem with being an editor, I read so much, and there's so much that I've carried with me, through the years, and anything by J. California Cooper. I love all of her books. I think she was just an amazing genius. And then I'd have to say Bell Hooks, Ain't I a Woman, and Bone Black, and All About Love, and Salvation. There's so many of her books that I love too. And I just, and then there's Somebody Flashed Across the Screen, No Disrespect, by Sister Soldier. That book has my heart, as well as others by Sister Soldier. And then most recently, I read a book called Hell of a Book by Jason Mott. And that book was about how a Black man can come to hate himself and his mind be tarnished by racism, and how he internalizes it. And that was quite a remarkable book, because it made me upset. It made me angry. It took me through a range of emotions. And then at the same time, I really enjoyed the messages. And that was just, outstanding. So
I also want to plug an amazing collection of stories and a novella called My Monticello by Jocelyn Nichols. And it's so inventive and so brilliant. And the central story, then the novella, is set in Charlottesville, Virginia, about a decade after the Unite the Right demonstration there and the violence. And just imagine if white supremacists were taking over the country, and you are a descendant of Thomas Jefferson, and you find yourself fleeing your home, and you take refuge in Monticello while you're awaiting the chaos. And it's brilliantly written, vividly imaginative. And it's one of the best things I've read in a long time. And she's an author who's I think she's 50, and it's really great to see that, as well as I want to plug also The Secrets of Church Ladies.
Love that.
And I just read that that's going to be an HBO series. That is the most unapologetically Black book you will ever want to read.
Yes.
It's wonderful. So, I mean, we could go on.
Yes.
We could just
go
on.
And then there's another one I want to mention too, which, in My Monticello, I have a copy of that too. And it was done by our friend Retha Powers at Henry Holt, which is just fabulous. And she's amazing. But there's another one I want to mention that I'm working on right now. And it's called Miss Chloe by A.J. Riddell. And it's about her friendship with Toni Morrison.
Okay.
But more than that, it affirms Black writers, particularly Black women. And it is something extraordinary. And on the back of the book, we have a quote from the book, which says, I'm going by memory here, which says that when a Black girl goes into a library, you may not recognize her when she emerges.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is
That
this not, this is about the friendship between Tony and AJ.
Yes.
It's nonfiction.
Nonfiction,
Right.
memoir.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. And really rich. Yes.
that sounds amazing. All of these books sound amazing. Between the comments and the books that you guys have mentioned that I haven't read, I know I'm going to be running my debit card up tonight because this all sounds like brilliant work that I definitely want to get into. And agree, Marita, with Secret Lives of Church Ladies. Like that was probably my favorite read of last year. It was just so real and just, like I loved that book so much. So Marita, can you share some of the challenges you faced when trying to get your work published? And then how did you overcome those challenges?
Well, I didn't have the usual experience. I think that next year will be the 40th anniversary of the publication of my first book, Migrations of the Heart. So I've been at this for seemingly a lifetime. So that when I got my first contract in 1980, I got it with Marie Brown. She was a Doubleday, and Marie Brown is a legendary figure in the world of publishing. She was one of the first Black women editors, and she midwifed a whole generation or more of Black writers into publication and into having a public voice. The irony was that when my agent submitted it to Marie, she loved it. But she said, I have, and this is how editing works. She said, I want to make sure I get your contract. So I have to wait until it's the right moment to put this book up. I can't put it up when we've done a book like it. I have to get allies among the other editors. So give me some time. Well, giving her time meant giving her a year. And I'm a new writer. I'm screaming with my editor, what's going on? What is she doing? But it took her a year so that I didn't have to, I didn't get a lot of rejections, but I simply had to wait a year. And once I was with Doubleday, I was with Doubleday for, a very, very long time and with a different press now. But I think that rejection and things taking a long time is just part of it. It really, really is. I mean, so many writers, have stories of, I think Tayari Jones said that her first book was told it should be a children's book. And Colson Whitehead got 27 rejections for his first book. And so rejection simply means that those publishers are not a good match. Or it could mean that you need to do more work, but whatever, it's all called writing. All of it is writing. Revisions writing, rejections writing, staying the course is writing.
Totally, totally. And I actually was on listening to a panel earlier just about failure and how like you can't take failure to the heart. You just have to keep going because those no's are going to eventually turn into a yes. And so moving on to the next question, there used to be a time where authors would need to go through these major publishing houses to get their work out there. Now with social media and all these options for self-publishing, do you feel that it benefits the author now more to self-publish or to continue trying to go through publishing houses to get their work out there?
Okay, I'll answer. I think and Marita, that was a beautiful thing that Marie could say to you, now is not the right time, and just, and I'll let you know, when it is. And I don't think we so much have that luxury anymore. And there's definitely some books I had to turn down because it wasn't the right time. And then a year later, 2 years later, I do want to go back to those and find that author and who sent it to me. And they're rarely still available. And perhaps the publishing didn't go so well, when they did publish, but that, makes the industry a little bit different now. And so unless I know the pros and cons of both publishing with a publisher and self-publishing. And what I would say about self-publishing is, if that's your job, promoting that one book, then you could probably make it.
Mm-hmm.
But that would have to be your only job. You can't have another full-time job and self-publish a book and think that you're going to be able to make the kind of traction you want to. Because Elin Harris was one of the first people to self-publish. And, you know, it was a full-time job. And those books were in his trunk, and he was driving all around and selling them. And he had a marketing degree. You know, there are different ebbs and flows in mainstream publishing, where sometimes you can get a ton of reviews for a book and still the book doesn't sell.
Mm-hmm.
You can win awards for that book and then the book still doesn't sell. So whether you self-publish or publish with a mainstream publisher, it's very important to be a motivated individual, because it takes a lot to sell a book, and it's not a guarantee if you publish with a mainstream publisher that it does result in more sales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I work with, in addition to doing workshops, I work as a writing coach, and I work with people evaluating their manuscripts. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a workshop on self-publishing with Tracy McGee on April 2nd. And for more information, you can visit my website. But, you know, the self-publishing thing is so interesting because we live in a country where there's like Americans, every American has a story that they want to turn into a book. But Americans don't want to read a darn thing. Okay. The ratio of reading to wanting to be published is crazy. And people have a lot of different reasons for wanting to self-publish. Sometimes a person will want to publish because they've had an interesting life. They don't have any idea about, I want to win a Pulitzer. I want to write a book so that I can give this to my grandchildren, so I can give this to my kids. Or I just want to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that self-publishing is a viable option. I think also that people have, as Tracy hinted a minute ago, a wildly inflated idea of what publishers, traditional mainstream publishers, can do for a good book. So that even a book published by a legacy publisher, one of the big five, may or may not sell, even when everything is in place. And a self-published book published by a person who's, as Tracy said, really motivated, really smart, gets out there, they may have a lot of success. So I think self-publishing is a viable option. And I've taught in MFA programs around the country where increasingly, because there are so many more good writers than the industry can publish, more writers are independently self-publishing. People who graduated from MFA programs, people that 15 years ago would have had no problem getting a deal. But we have in America, I think, Tracy, a glut of really good writers. And
yes, I think we do.
Self-publishing is out there for them. I'm glad there's no stigma to it anyway. And even before Elin, there was, of course, Don Lee, Haki Madhubuti, and there was Nikki Giovanni. And back in the day, when I was in college, they started out self-publishing. And then Broadside Press in Detroit began publishing Black writers. But there's a long tradition. Walt Whitman self-published. Okay, we really want to go back. In fact, he wrote reviews of his own poetry books under a pseudonym. So he was very motivated. But yes, self-publishing is fine. And Tracy is right that if your goal is to sell that book, it has to be your only job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And to Tracy's point too, is like, it would have to be your only job if you're self-publishing, but also, you know, there is no guarantee. So you can go through the major publishing houses and everything, but it's not going to guarantee the sales. Your work actually still has to be really good. And like you guys said, there are so many great writers now. We just need to kind of catch up on the reading front. So speaking of that, about a couple years ago, I joined Bookstagram and created kind of like a book account. And it really opened my eyes to just so many different pieces of art from Black women, but also just a community of Black women readers. And so my question to you guys is, how important are book clubs and Black-owned bookstores and Bookstagram accounts ran by Black women to the success of Black women authors?
Very, very critical. Very critical. And it's important for us to patronize the bookstores. And I myself of late have been discovering books on Instagram, because there's so many coming out that, it's been a little bit of a challenge to keep up. Whereas this is the first time that's happened for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to, first of all, buy a copy of every Black book that comes out. And then, and so now I just have found myself catching up. And I'm really pleased to see all the voices and the way that they're being published and how they're being done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, Black women's book. Well, an interesting statistic is that the most likely person in America to be reading a book is a college-educated Black woman.
Oh, wow.
More than any other segment of the population.
Mm-hmm. The largest demographic of readers.
And Black women's book clubs have been crucial in my career. They're smart, they're savvy, they're dedicated, they're loyal. And so they're very, very important. And I'm glad to see, after a period where some of the independent bookstores were dying or closing because of the large, Amazon and all those places, more and more Black women are opening bookstores around the country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm noticing too, a lot of Black women are also opening like virtual, like drop ship bookstores, which is neat to see. I definitely agree we all need to continue to patronize these businesses because that's what helps to keep our art alive. About a couple years ago, I joined, I think the book club is called Book Girl Magic. And that was the first Black woman ran book club I'd ever been in. Prior to that, I was kind of joining, random ones ran by, mostly majority white women. And so I remember going to my first book club and the experience was just like mind blowing to me because I'm like, wait, people are on here in their bonnets, they're giving their real opinions. I feel like I am home. So I think that it's important to have those, safe spaces for Black women. And it's, you see that Black women especially, we're so supportive when it comes to, reading and promoting books and things like that. So that's kind of how I find a lot of the reads that, I get to is just from the people that I follow. Do either of you guys belong to any book clubs or have created a book club yourselves?
No, I created a foundation.
Yes. Talk about the Hurston Wright Foundation.
Yes.
Well, the Zora Neale Hurston Richard Wright Foundation is now 31 years old. And it was started back in 32 years back in 1990 by Clyde McIlvaine and I. And we recognized that was a time when Terry McMillan, Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, these voices were beginning to really become quite prominent. And at the same time, more and more young Black people were writing. So we wanted to create a national institution that would really provide community for Black writers. And over the years, we have established a really important track record of creating community and honoring Black writers, training Black writers, mentoring Black writers. And Tracy is one of our stalwart supporters. The support she's given us over the years has meant so much. And so I publicly thank you, Tracy. But
Thank you, Marita.
So Hurston Wright is part of a family. There's Kavi Khanum, Kabilio, Vona, and this is something that today's Black writers can really depend on, a whole community of Black people wherever they are.
I love that. And for those that just saw the comment, the website to read more about Hurston Wright is hurstonwright.org. So if you guys want to check that out, feel free to go ahead. And that just kind of goes into my next question about just upcoming projects or works that you guys want to share with the audience. Are there any other things, Marita, that you're working on, or Tracy?
I want to call out the National Book Club Conference first. That happens every year in Atlanta. It's like over 1,000 people usually go every year, and they bring authors there. And they brought one year they brought one of my favorite authors, Jennifer Lewis from Blackish.
Yeah.
Love her and love her book, and she has a new one coming in August, which I'm very excited about. And then I also have a book by Zane Asher, who is a commentator, who has her own show on CNN International. And she's writing a book about her mother, and what the mother did to ensure that her 4 children were successful. So it's called Where the Children Take Us. And so, and the book opens with her mother getting a phone call that there's been a terrible car accident, and that either her son or her husband is alive. And she finds out that her husband has been, killed. And she's very depressed, but her son is hanging on in the hospital for months. And so she has these 4 children, and she sets up her house so that it becomes about them and about their studies and about their excellence. And it's how these Nigerian children, what the mother did to make them successful, and as well as everything that the mother went through in her own life. And so she ended up, her children were Zane Asher, a CNN commentator. One child is a businessman. And then another child is an Oscar-nominated actor. Chitawel Injikor for Selma. And so it was just phenomenal. And what the book overall shows is that how Nigerians have become the model minority.
Yeah.
They've knocked Asians out of that spot.
Yes.
And they're some of the richest and most successful, have the most doctorates and are outstanding. And so it shows what's important. It gets us all back to our core values of learning and reading and writing and supporting each other as a family and a community, because that's what makes people successful. And I think we as a people, need to get back to those roots too. So I'm very, thrilled about that book. I published a book called We Are Each Other's Harvest, which is about Black farmers and the history thereof and everything they've been through. And it's just a phenomenal, beautiful, amazing book. The Secretary of Agriculture said it was an important book that people should read. Wow. And so, so you can understand what's happened to our food chain and why we have these food deserts and all of those things. And so I'm really pleased about that. And of course, You Don't Know Us Negroes and other essays by Zora Neale Hurston. And we're publishing a lot of really wonderful fiction on the Amistad list, particularly by Lady Hubbard, which I would really hope that people will go out and search her, who did The Rib King and The Talented Mr. Ripkin. And she has a forthcoming collection of stories, The Last Standout. And so she's just really young, up and coming, but really an important writer. And so we're thrilled to have her on the list. And I hope that people will seek her out and discover her, because you will not be able to forget her work. And, and Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson, which we published a few years ago, which is really great as well in the fiction category. And we have a new one coming by Diane McKinney Whetstone. And so I would hope that people would look out for that. And so we have a lot of great and important books, by the We have a book coming from Deborah Plant called Of Greed and Glory. And Deborah Plant is the editor of Barracoon. And yeah, so she has this really powerful book coming out in the fall of this year. And so we're doing great things. Ben Jealous, we have a book coming from him, who used to be the president of the NAACP. And so we're expanding, growing, and what I think doing great things. And so those are the books that I'm excited about, that, you know. And The Great Miss Elias. Hannah Elias was one of the first Black millionaires out of slavery.
Oh.
Yes. And I did a book called Black Fortunes that performed extraordinarily well, which talks about the first 6 Black millionaires. So this is like slavery ended on Monday, and on Wednesday they were millionaires, because that's how fierce we are. But it didn't exactly happen like that, but that's how fierce we are as people, you know. And
Yes.
right, yes. And then and so Barbara Chase Rabode, who wrote Sally Hemings, did a book called The Great Miss Elias, which is a fictional account of how she gained her wealth and who she was as a person, but all based on a true story, you know. So
Awesome. It sounds like a lot of great things in the pipeline. I could just hear the money chinging in my ear, like, okay, gotta get that one, gotta get that one. So I think they're popping it right up on the screen now. So you guys be sure to check out all of these reads. Marita.
And don't forget one more. Don't forget Just As I Am by Cicely Tyson.
Oh,
well, that's a great, yeah.
Great. Yeah, I just read that one.
That in 3 days or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. So,
the response to The Strong Black Woman has been so gratifying and enthusiastic. So many people have just thanked me for giving Black women permission to set boundaries, to say that they can ask for help, you know, to say that they don't have to be strong all the time. And I feel that I'm now kind of a soldier enrolled in this growing army of women and others who are challenging a mythology that served our mothers and our grandmothers. And because the world that they lived in required that kind of invincible strength. But the fact that they were paying an enormous psychological and physical price for it was something that was unexamined. And so now we live in a world where we can examine it. And it's been very, very gratifying to see the reaction to the book. And in fact, I was so heartened by it that so many people ask me, well, Marita, what do you do? What are your practices? How do you stay mentally healthy, physically healthy? That I've written a workbook that can be used as a companion for a strong Black woman, which talks about taking care of your mind, joy, celebration, setting boundaries, and caring for your body. So, and also because of the book, I've gotten many requests to do mental health workshops. I'm doing a 3-month virtual residency at Johns Hopkins Medical Center, talking to the staff about self-care, mental and physical health, as well as I'm even doing a creative writing workshop on writing through stress, writing through the storm, I call it. And so this book that I started writing in 2020, almost as a way to heal during the crisis of 2020, has really taken me on a wonderful, expansive journey. And I find myself now, I asked myself a couple of months ago, who's going to write about 2020? Well, I know a lot of people are going to write about 2020, and I'm going to be one of them. I'm writing a novel set in Washington, D.C., a Black family going through 2020. The father is one of the early deaths. And so his wife, her 2 grown children are in quarantine, locked down with that legacy as well as other legacies.
Awesome. That's amazing. So I have one final question for you both. A very easy question, I hope. So, what book are you currently reading? Well, I guess it's two parts. So, what book are you currently reading? And then, what book, if someone asks you, I need a good book to read, are you telling them to read?
Well, right now I'm listening on Audible to Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. And it's a book about mindfulness and living a whole, healthy, balanced life. And actually, the book I read before that was As I Lay Dying by Faulkner, which is, I had gotten through college and Faulkner, but it's amazing. It's a masterpiece. And I read widely. My reading habits are very diverse. I read Black people, white, I read everybody. I read nonfiction. I usually will read nonfiction and fiction. So I'm reading a lot of stuff, but that's what I just finished. And I'm teaching in my workshop, the workshop that I'm doing now, The Secrets of Church Ladies, and we're having a lot of fun with that.
I'd love to be part of that. That I know that discussion has to be good. What about you, Tracy?
Right now, I'm overloaded with editing, and so I'm not reading anything. When we used to travel back and forth to work, I would allow myself 15 minutes to read on the way there and on the way back and all that, something I wasn't working on. And so since that's been eliminated, it's been a little bit challenging. Right now, what I'm working on and reading is a book called Morningside about the Greenboro Massacre. And then I'm also reading and editing a book on Black people and work called Gray Areas by a wonderful professor. And so I'm working on those two right now. And so I'm not reading anything. And I just finished up Jennifer Lewis's new one. Going through that with her. So I'm not reading anything, unfortunately. I can tell you what I recently ordered.
That works. Or if you want to share, what book you would recommend to others to read that's just really good, that works too.
Okay. I just ordered the new repackaging of Angela Davis's autobiography that Toni Morrison originally published. And so I just ordered that. The package looks phenomenal and just amazing. And then I'll tell you like another book that just changed there are two books that changed my life forever, which was Toni Morrison's Sula.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, which to me, what came out of that book, because I read it very, very young, for me was don't judge others. And so I don't actually. And then that has lived with me. And Leo Buscaglia, Living, Loving, and Learning, which is written by a white guy.
Yeah.
But I love him.
Yeah.
I love him. And when I worked at Henry Holt, he came into the office one day and I could not believe that was him. And I just went up there and, hugged him and we rocked back and forth and everything. And my publisher at the time said, "You two know each other?" And I had to tell her what his books are all about. And yeah. And another interesting thing when I started at Henry Holt was there was a book by Toni Morrison, The Bluest Eye. It was a first edition that was hanging out on the bookshelf all by itself. It was a hardcover. I'm like, what? This is mine.
This is mine. You can take that off your hands.
Exactly. This has been waiting for me. This is mine. So, and then later on, I found a couple others. So I have like 3 first editions of the Bluest Eye, and that
Wow.
holds me and keeps me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But in terms of really satisfying reads, I also had a tremendous amount of admiration for How Beautiful We Were by Mbolo Mbue. And she spent 20 years gestating and writing this book, which is the story of a village in an African country that suffers environmental degradation. Now, that may not sound like a very interesting story, but it's peopled by such a great cast of characters, and she does it so well. It's beautifully, beautifully written, and it covers about 40 years in the life of this village and the little girl who grows up to become an environmental activist. So if you're looking for a book that's set on the continent and that's deeply rich and so powerful, How Beautiful We Were by Mbolo Mbue.
And don't forget her first one, Behold the Dreamers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that book. I love that book.
Mm-hmm.
I love that book.
Mm-hmm.
And I have questions I want to ask her. And I never seem to be in the same room with her, that I want to ask her about that book. And I think she's a phenomenal writer. Phenomenal.
Definitely. Well, we're going to have to figure out how to publish all of these reads in a list for everyone, because there were so many great books mentioned tonight. I just want to thank you both, Tracy and Marita, for joining us for this discussion. I want to thank the audience. Everyone, if you aren't already following Unerased Black Women Speak on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, feel free to go ahead and follow now. The tag is Unerased BWS. So feel free to follow. Also follow Marita and Tracy. I definitely will be following you guys' journey moving forward. But thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing.
Of course. I hope you have a
It's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerase of a sisterhood, of a race. It's the strength for me, it's the strength, it's the legacy, it's the faith, it's the history, unerase of a sisterhood, of a race.
In my shoes, listen to my blues. I stand before you, resist.